now. I am the emperor of dreams. I crown me with the million-colored sun of secret worlds, incredible antique, the trailing skies for vestment when I soar. Throned on the mountain zenith, and illume the spaceward from horizons infinite. Like rampant monsters roaring for their gluts, the fiery crested oceans rise and rise, by jealous moons maleficently urged to follow me forever. Mountains horned, with peaks of sharpest adamant and marked with silver-lit volcanoes lava-longed. You surfed the skies with thunder but in vain, and continents of serpent-shapen trees, with slimy trunks that lengthen league by league, pursue my flight through ages spurned to fire by that supreme ascendant sorcerers and evil kings predominantly armed with scrolls of formless dragon skin, whereon our word, like runes of ever-twisting flame, would stay me and the sirens of the stars. Would stay me and the sirens of the stars, with foam like songs from silver fragrance wrought, would lure me to their crystal reefs and moons, where viper-eyed senescent devils dwell, with antic gnomes abominably wise. Heave up their icy horns across my way, but naught deters me from the goal ordained by suns and eons and immortal wars, and sung by moons and motes. The goal whose name is all the secret of forgotten glyphs, by sinful gods in torrid rubies writ, for ending of a brazen book. The goal, whereat my soaring ecstasy may stand, in Atlas heavens multiplied to hold my hordes of thunder-vested avatars, and Promethean armies of my thoughts, that brandish clasping levins there I call my memories, intolerably clad in light the peaks of paradise may wear, and leave the Armageddon of my dreams, whose instant shout of triumph is become immensity's own music. For their feet are found in uninnumerable worlds, remote in alien epochs, and their arms upraised are columns potent to exalt with ease, ineffable the countless thrones of all the gods that are gods to thee, and bear the seats of Asmodean set above the seventh paradise. Supreme, incumbent, omniscience manifold, and served by senses multitudinous, far posted on the shifting walls of time, with eyes that roam the star and winnowed fields of utter night and chaos, I convoke the babble of their visions, and attend at once their myriad witness I behold, in umbos where the fallen titans dwell, with mountain-builded walls and gulfs remote, the secret cleft that cunning dwarves have dug beneath an out-like buttress, and I list, too late, the clam of adamantine gongs, dimmed by their drowsy guardians whose feet have felled the wasp-like sting of little knives, and brewed slumber of the basilisk, or the pale juice of wounded hoopers in some ruined Antarian garden world. I see the sacred flower with lips of purple flesh, and silver-lashed vermilion-lidded eyes of torpid azure luminous furtive priests. At moonless eve in terror seek to slay, with bubbling grails of sacrificial blood that hide a willis poison. And I read upon the tongue of a forgotten sphinx the annulling word a spiteful demon wrote in gall of slain chimeras. And I know what pentacles the lunar wizards use, that once allured the gulf-returning rock with 10 great wings of fur-leaded storm, to path midmost an alabaster mount, and there with boulder-weighted webs of dragon's gut, uplift by cranes a captive giant built, they woo the monstrous moonquake throbbing bird, and plucked from off his saber-taloned feet Uranian sapphires, fast in frozen blood, and amethysts from Mars I lean to read, with slat-lipped mages in an evil star, the monstrous archives of a war that ran through wasted eons, and the prophecy of wars renewed, which shall commemorate some enmity of wyvern-headed kings. A blue to the break of time, I know the blooms of bluish fungus freaked with mercury. That blood within the creators of the moon, and in one still Selenic and feeder. And I know what clammy blossoms blanched and cavern grown are proffered to their gods in Uranus by no-live peoples, and the livid seed of some black fruit a king in Saturn ate, which cast upon his tinkling palace floor, took root between the burnished flags, and now hath mounted and become a hellish tree, whose lithe and hairy branches lined with mouths, net like 100 roots his lurching throne, and straight at starting pillars I behold the slowly thronging corals that usurp some harbor of a million-masted sea, and sun them on the league-long woods of gold, bulks of enormous crimson kraken-limbed and kraken-headed, lifting up as crowns the octagonals of perished embers and galleys fraught with royal gems that sailed from a sea-fled haven. Swifter and stranger grow the visions now a mighty city looms, hewn from a hill of purest cinnabar to domes and turrets like a sunrise thronged, with tier on tier of captive moons half drowned in shifting iridescence, but whose hands were sculptors of its doors and columns wrought to semblance of prodigious blooms of old. No eremite had lingered there to say, and no man comes to learn. For long ago a prophet came, warning its tenant king against the plague of lickings that had crept across subverted empires, and the sand of wastes that Cyclopean mountains wore, in which slow and ineluctable would come to take his fiery bastions and his veins, and quench his domes with greenish tether now. I see a host of naked gems armed with horns of behemoth and unicorn, who wander blinded by the clinging spells of hostile wizardry, and stagger on to forests where the very leaves have eyes, and ebonies like wrathful dragons roar, to teaks that chuckle in the loathly gloom, where coiled lioness lean with serried fangs, from writhing palms with swollen bowls that moan, where leeches of a scarlet moss have sucked the eyes of some dead monster, and have crawled to bask upon his azure-spotted spine, where hydra-throated blossoms hiss and sing, or yawn with mouths that drip a sluggish dew, whose touch is death and slow corrosion. Then I watch a war of pygmies met by night, with pedal their drums of parrots hide, on plains with no horizon wherein God might lose his way. For centuries, and there in withered light and fulgurs all convolve, a rout of green, enormous moons ascend, with rays that like a shivering venom run on inch-long swords of lizard fang.
shade. From this my throne is from a central sun, but pageantries of worlds and cycles pass. Forgotten splendors dream by dream unfold, like tapestry and vanish violet suns, or songs of changeful iridescence bring their rays about me like the colored lights. Imploring priests might live to glorify the face of some averted god, the songs of mystic poets in a purple world. Send to me music that is made from unconceived perfumes and the pulse of love ineffable. The lute players whose lutes are strung with gold of the utmost moon call forth delicious languors never known, safe to their golden kings, the sorcerers of hooded stars. Inscrutable to God, surrender me their demon-rested scrolls, inscribed with lore of monstrous alchemies and awful transformations. If I will, I am at once the vision and the seer, and mingle with my ever-straining pumps, and still abide their suzerain. I am the neophyte who serves a nameless god, within whose vein the fanes of hecatopolos were arched the titan worshippers might bear, or flags to pave the threshold. Or I am the god himself, who calls the fleeing clouds into the nave, where suns might congregate, and veils the darkling mountain of his face with fold on solemn fold, for whom the priests amass their monthly hecatomodem gems, opals that are of a camel cumbering load, and monstrous alabrandines won from war, with realms of hostile serpents which arise, combustible in vapors many-hued, and myrrh excelling perfumes in his eye. The king who holds with scepter dropping hand the helm of some Greek barge of orichalcum, sailing upon an amethystine sea to isles of timeless summer, for the snows of Hyperborean winter and their winds sleep in his jewel-builded capital. Nor any charm of flame-wrought wizardry, nor conjured suns may rout them, so he feeds with captive kings to urge his serried oars. Hopeful of tales where amaranthine dawn have never left the faintly sighing moat, and lisping molly firm of heart, I fare in panoply with azure diamond, as hero of a quest Achernar lights to deserts filled with ever-wandering flames that feed upon the sullen marl soar, to wrap the slopes of mountains, and to leap with tongues intolerably lengthening that lift the blenched heavens, but they live secure as in a garden wall from wind. A lonely flower by a placid well, with most the flaring tumult of the flames that roars a storm-possessed sea, implacable forever, and within that simple grail the blossom lives. There lies one drop of an incomparable, which heals the parched weariness of kings, and cures the wound of wisdom. I am page to an emperor who reigns 10,000 years. And through his labyrinthine palace rooms, through courts and colonnades and balconies, wherein immensity itself is mazed, I seek the golden gorget he hath lost, on which in sapphires fine as orris seed are writ the names of his conniving stars and friendly planets roaming. Thus I hear, like demon tears incessant through dark ages, the drip of sullen clepsydre, and once in every lustrum hear the brazen clocks innumerably clang with such a sound as brazen hammers make by devils dinned on tombs of all the dead and nevermore. I find the gorget, but at length I find a sealant room, whose nameless prisoner moans with a nameless torture, and would turn to hell's red rackets to a lily couch from that whereon they stretched him. And I find prostrate upon a lotus-painted floor the loveliest of all beloved slaves my emperor hath, and from her pulseless side a serpent rises whiter than the root of some benefic bloom in darkness grown, and gazes up with green-lit eyes that seem like drops of cold congealing poison. What word was whispered in a tongue unknown, in crypts of some impenetrable world? Whose is the dark Didoni secrecy I cannot share, though I am king of suns, and king therewith of strong eternity, whose nomens with their swords of shadow guard my gates. And slave intruder, silence loads the wind of ether, and the worlds are still to hear the word that flees my audience. In simultaneous ruin all my dreams fall like a rack of fuming vapors raised to semblance by a necromant, and leave spirit and sense of vividly alone. above a universe of shrouded stars and suns that wander, countless sullen gloom, like witches to a Sabbath fear is born, in crypts below the nadir, and hath crawled, reaching the floor of space, and waits for wings to lift it upward like a hellish worm, fain for the flesh of cherubim, red orbs, and eyes that gleam remotely as the stars, but are eyes of suns or galaxies, gather and throng to the base of darkness, flame behind some black abysmal curtain burns, implacable, and fanned to whitest wrath by rays of wings that flail a whiffle gloom, and make a brief and broken wind that moans, as one who rides a throbbing rack. There is a thing that crouches, worlds and years remote, whose horns of demons sharpens, rasping forth a note to shatter the donjon keeps of time, or crack the sphere of crystal. All is dark for ages, and my toiling heart suspends its clamor as within the clutch of death, tightening with tense hermetic rivers. Then in one enormous million flashing flame, the stars unveil, the suns remove their cowls, and beam to their responding planets. Time is mine once more, and armies of its dreams rally to that insuperable throne. Burn of the Senate. Once again I seek the meads of shining moly I had found in some anterior vision by a stream. No cloud hath ever tarnished where the sun, a gold Narcissus, loiters evermore above his golden image. But I find the ebbing water will not keep, with eyes like sapphires that have lain in hell and felt the hissing coals. And all the flowers about me turn to hooded serpents, swayed by flutes of devils in lascivious dance, meet for the nod of Satan when he reigns above the raging Sabbath, and is moved by sour bands of witches. Then I turn to mountains guarding with their horns of snow, the source of that befooled rill and sea. A pinnacle where none but eagles climb, a pinnacle where none but eagles climb, and they with failing penance, but in vain I flee, for on that pylon of the sky some curse hath turned the unprinted snow to flame, red fires that curl and cluster to my tread, trying the summit's narrow cirque. And now I see a silver python far beneath, vast as a river that a fiend hath witched, and forced to flow reverted in its course to mountains whence it issued rapidly. It winds from slope to crumbling slope, and fills ravines and castle gorges, till the crags totter with coil on coil. Incumbent, soon it hath entwined the pinnacle I keep, and gapes with a fanged, unfathomable maw, wherein great Typhon and Enceladus were orts of daily glut. But I am gone, for at my call a hippogriff hath come, and firm between his thunder-beating wings I mount the sheer cerulean walls of noon, and see the earth a spurned pebble fall, lost in the fields of nether stars, and seek a planet where the outwearied wings of time might pause and fall for respite, or the blooms of death be stayed and loiter in reprieve. Some deathless lily, for therein beauty hath found an avatar of flowers, blossoms that clothe it as a colored flame, from peak to peak, from pole to sullen pole, and turn the skies to perfume. There I find a lonely castle, calm and unbeset, by the purple spears of amaranth and leafing iris, tender sordid walls of flushed marble, wonderful with rose and domes like golden bubbles, and minarets that take the clouds as coral. These are mine for voiceless looms, the peaceful barbican and the heavy teeth portcullis hangs aloft to grin a welcome. So I leave a while my hippogriff to crop the magic needs and pass into a court the lilies hold, and tread them to a fragrance that pursues to win the portico whose columns carved of lazuli and amber mark the palms of bright Adenic forests capitoled with fronds of stone fretted to berry lace, enfolding droops that seem as tawny clusters of breasts of unknown iris, and convolved with vines of shut and shadowy leafed flowers, like the dropped lids of women that endure some loin dissolving ecstasy through doors elate with lilies twined luxuriously. I enter dazed and blinded with the sun, and here in gloom the changing colors cloud, a chuckle sharp as crepitating ice, upheaved and cloven by shoulders of the damned who strive in Antenora. When my eyes dazzle and the cloud of color fades, I find me in a monster-guarded room. Unite, unite. Marble apes with wings of griffins crowd on walls, an evil sculptor wrought, and beasts wearing the sloth and vampire bat unite, pendulous by their toes of tarnished bronze. Eats up the shadowy interval of lamps that hang from obnoxious light, a ripple born by the wind from pool to sluggish pool, in fields where white Cocytus flows his bound. A crackling smile around that circle runs, and all the stone rock gibbons stare at me with eyes that turn to glowing coals. A fear that found no name in Babel flings me on, breathless and faint with horror, to a hall within whose weary self-reverting round the languid curtains, heavier than palms, would move or would be depict a weary king who fain would cool his jewel-crusted hands in lakes of emerald evening, or the field of dreamless poppies pure with rain. I flee onward, and all the shadowy curtains shake with tremors of a silken sighing mirth and whispers of the innumerable king, breathing the tale of ancient pestilence whose very words are vile contagion. Then I reach a room where caryatids, carved in the form of voluptuous Titan women, surround a throne flowering ebony, where creeps a vine of crystal on the throne. There lolls a one enormous worm whose bulk tunic with all the rottenness of kings overflows its arms with fold on chrysid fold. Obscenely gloating, open mouth he leans, and from his bulbous throat a score of tongues, depending like to wreaths of torpid vipers, dribbled with phosphorescent slime, runs down all his length of soft and monstrous folds, and creeping among the flowers of ebony, lends them the life of tiny serpents now. Hear the horror, oak those red and lashless slits of eyes that draw the gnat and midge. I turn and fall down a dusty hall whose gloom lined by the statues with their mighty limbs ends in the golden roofed balconies spearing the flowered horizon. Night. Here my heart hath hushed the panic to load on its pulses. I listen from beyond the horizon's rim, a mother fate as when the far saloon mounting from unknown deserts opens forth. Wide as the waste, those wings of torrid night that shake the doom of cities from their folds, and musters in its fan a thousand winds that lift its rooted arms for reasons rise and sweep the sands of fury as the storm. Approaching mounts and lounge to the ears of down the torn fields of sesame, so groans the mother
and the shadow creeps above the dull horizon like a dawn of darkness climbing, seen as more they come. The Sabbath of retribution torn from altered spheres that knew my trespassing, and led by vengeful demons and dire lasters that owned my sway aforetime. Cockatrice, Chimera, Martin, Chorus, Behemoth, Carrion, and Sphinx, and Hydra on my ken. Arises night, some Afric-builded city, consonate in the lifting of a lash, with thunderous domes and sounding obelisks, and towers of night and fire alternate. Wings of white hot stone along the hissing wind bear up the huge and furnace-hearted beasts of hells beyond Rutilicus and things, whose lightless length would meet the gyre of moons, born from the caverns of a dying sun, uncoiled to the very zenith half disclosed. From gulfs below the horizon, octopi, like blazing moons with countless arms of fire, climb from the seas of ever-surging flame that roll and roar through planets unconsumed, beating on coasts of unknown metals beasts that range the mighty worlds of Alioth rise, arresting the heavens with multitudinous horns, amid whose maze the winds are lost and born, on cliff-like brows of plunging scolopendras, the shell-rock towers of ocean witches loom, and griffin-mounted gods and demons throned, on sable dragons and the cockadrills that bear the spleenful pygmies on their backs, and blue-faced wizards from the worlds of sight. On whom titanic scorpions fawn, and armies that move with fronts reverted from the foe, and strike athwart their shoulders at the shapes. The shields reflect in crystal, an idola fashioned within unfathomable caves, by hands of eyeless peoples and the blind, warp-shapen monsters of a sunless world, with krakens from the ultimate abyss, and demogorgons the outer dark, a rising shout with dire multi-sunless clamors, and threatening me with dooms ineffable, in words whereat the heavens leap to flame, and dance upon the enchanted palace falling, for league on league before their shadows light, and eat like fire the honor and I needs, leaving an ashen desert in the palace. I hear the apes of marble shriek and howl, and all the women-shapen columns moan, babbling with terror in my tenfold fear, a monstrous dread unnamed in any hall.
Rise and flee with the fleeing wind for wings, and in a trice the wizard palace reefs, and spring into a single tower of flame, goes out and leaves no shard nor ember flow. Beyond the world upon that fleeting wind, I reach the gulf's irrespirable verge, where facts as strong as storm for breath and fall supportless through the nadir plunged gloom. Beyond the scope and vision of the sun, to other skies and systems. In a world deep-wooded with the multicolored fungi that soars a semblance of fantastic palms, I fall as falls the meteor stone, and break a score of trunks to atom powder unharmed. I rise and through the illimitable woods, among the trees of flimsy opal roam, and see their tops that clamber hour by hour to touch the sons of Iris, things unseen. Charnel breath informs the tideless air, with spreading pools of feeder follow me, elusive past the ever-changing palms, and pairing moths with wide and ashen wings, flit on before, and insects ember-hued, descending hurtle through the gorgeous gloom, and quench themselves in crumbling thickets heard, far off the gauntlet roar of beasts unknown. Sounds at measured intervals of time, shaking the riper trees to dust that falls in clouds of acrid perfume, stifling me beneath an irised pall. Palmettos grow far apart and lessen momently to shrubs that dwarf might topple over them. I see an empty desert, all ablaze with amethyst and rubies and the dust of garnets or carnelians. On I roam, treading the gorgeous grit that dazzles me with leaping waves of endless rutilancy, whereby the air is turned to a crimson gloom, through which I wander blind as any kobold, till underfoot the grinding sands give place to stone or metal with a massive ring, more welcome to my ears than golden bells or tinkle of silver fountains. When the gloom of crimson lifts, I stand upon the edge of a broad black plain of adamant that reaches level as windless water to the verge of all the world, and through the sable plain 100 streams of shattered marble run, and streams of broken steel and streams of bronze, like to the ruin of all the wars of time, to plunge with clangor of timeless cataracts and down the gulf's eternals. So I follow between a river of steel and a river of bronze, with the ripples loud and tuneless as the clash of a million lutes, and come to the precipice from which they fall, and make the mighty sound of a million swords that beat a million shields within its spears and armor. In the wars of half the world and eons far beneath, they fall through gulfs and cycles of the void, and vanish like a stream of broken stars into the nether darkness. Or the gods of any sun or demons of the gulf will dare to know whatever now means is fed thereby and mounts forevermore in one unebbing tide. One windless cloud, or night of sudden and supreme eclipse, is on the sun's opal. At my side the rivers run, where the wan and ghostly gleam through darkness falling, as the night that falls from spheres extinguished turning. I behold betwixt the sable desert and the suns the poised wings of all the dragon rout, for flown in black occlusion thousandfold through stars and deeps and devastated worlds upon my trail of terror. winds, rocks, and sluggish dark chimeras, heavy winged after the raving of disputable lands, and harpies and the vulture birds of hell, hot from abominable feasts and fame. To cool their beaks and talons in my blood, all have gathered in the wingless rear. With rank on rank of foul colossal worms, makes horrent now the horizon from the one. I hear the shriek of wyverns loud and shrill as tempests in a broken fane and roar. Sphinxes like relentless toll of bells from towers infernal cloud on hellish cloud. They arch the zenith, and a dreadful wind falls from them like the wind before the storm. Spirit lost on the pit's undying tempest, louder grows the thunder of the streams of stone and bronze, redoubled with the roar of torrent wings. Inseparable mingles gas I keep my footing in the gulfward winds of fear, and mighty thunders beating to the void in sea like waves incessant, and would flee with them, and prove the nadir found in night where fall the streams of ruin. But when I reach the verge and seek through some defeating gloom to measure with my gaze the dread descent, I see a tiny star within the depths, a light that stays me while the wings of doom convene their thickening thousands. For the star increases, taking to its wellers orb. With all the speed of horror changed dreams, the light is